Sir.
Can you prove to me God exists? And
Sure.
follow up, can you prove to me that the Christian God is quote unquote the right God?
You bet. I will prove to you that God exists if you first prove to me that I'm not just a bad dream you're having right now.
I can't prove that.
Thank you. I will prove to you that God exists if you first prove to me that your taste buds tell you the truth that the milk is sour. Can you prove that?
Can't prove that.
I will prove to you that God exists if you first prove to me that your eyesight really perceives reality. Can you prove that?
Can't prove it.
Thank you.
Then why does
what
the
on
Bible
earth are you doing
say-
asking me to prove God exists? Because you know there's no way,
Okay.
there's no way that I could ever prove that God exists.
Can you give me a good argument for it without using the Bible or quoting Jesus?
You bet. Thank you. Great. Yes, I can answer the question. What is the evidence, not the proof,
Okay.
but the evidence that God exists? The evidence that God exists, I'll give you 11 pieces of evidence, okay? First one, order and design point to an intelligent mind. The order and design of the cosmos points to an intelligent mind.
How?
You and I are standing at the foot of Mount Rushmore. As we're standing there, I turn to you and say, hey, isn't it incredible the way the water just dripped over the rock face? Hey, it's George Washington up there. Wow, it's Teddy Roosevelt. Isn't it amazing the way the water, by accident, just carved out those heads on Mount Rushmore?
That doesn't show anything.
Yeah, it
It
shows.
just shows that there's we happen to be an intelligent byproduct of evolution.
No, you don't get order and design by chance, sir. Order and design point to a designer. Designer genes demand a designer.
This guy's good. He's good.
Okay.
I don't like him, but he's good.
All right.
It's very simple. Second point. The universe is eternal. No, it's not. There's a Big Bang.
Okay.
So the universe is not eternal. The universe has a beginning. Everything that has a beginning has a cause. The universe has a beginning, therefore the universe has a cause. The best explanation is an uncaused cause. That's God. Third piece of evidence for God's existence, the anthropic principle. Life is balanced on a razor's edge. There are so many ingredients that go into allowing this earth to sustain life that it ain't no accident, sir. It's got to be an intelligent mind. If the earth was a little closer to the sun, we'd all fry. If the earth was a little further from the sun, we'd all freeze.
Well, I mean, the galaxy is huge. I mean, chance says that there will be a terrestrial planet at some point that just happens to be in the right location, that's perfectly around the sun, and
Point 4, the amount of information densely packed into the DNA of a single cell demands an intelligent mind. Every time you are confronted by densely packed information, there's got to be an intelligent mind.
I feel like 3 of the points you've given me are just astronomical odds, and you're just quoting God as proof because it's just an easy way out.
Why'd you use the word proof?
Proof.
Evidence.
Evidence.
Here we go. Good.
He's really good.
Fifth point.
I'm sorry. I don't like it.
Charles Darwin pointed out that if something is irreducibly complex, the whole idea of evolution by chance and fate falls apart. I think there are more than enough examples of things that are irreducibly complex, as Michael Behe points out, the biochemist at Lehigh. Irreducible complexity shows that you cannot go from this stage to this stage to this stage to this stage, because in between, if that is missing, that never happens.
What?
Mousetrap, slab of wood, spring, hammer. You cannot evolve a mousetrap from a slab of wood. Mousetrap, slab of wood, and hammer. You cannot evolve from that a mousetrap, because a mousetrap doesn't catch any mice if it's just a slab of wood, or if it's a slab of wood and a hammer. It's irreducibly complex. You have to have the slab of wood, the spring, and the hammer. Well, it's the same with the eye. If something's missing out of the eye, it ain't gonna work. And there's so many parts of the eye that are necessary in order for an eye to be an eye. It can't go from one little stage to another. Now, the classic example is the living cell. See, a living cell is a living cell is irreducibly complex. It can't go from one stage to another stage to another stage and then suddenly become a living cell. It's irreducibly complex. Sixth piece of evidence for God's existence is moral absolutes. The slaughter of innocent children is never good. It is always wrong.
Well, so you're saying that there's a universal moral conduct or standard?
I'm saying that there are moral absolutes.
Okay.
The only way there can be is if there's a God, the creator. If there is no God, it's all relative.
A moral absolute. You said that the children. I'm sorry. What did you
Slaughter of
say?
innocent children is absolutely evil.
Okay. Well, what about the rape and selling of innocent children? Is that morally completely like evil as well? Because I can point to numerous accounts, numerous occasions where parents are sold by their own children. You know, they're sold into slavery. And unfortunately, I'm from Toledo, which is known as like. Apparently, last week I was told by a group that Toledo has a lot of human trafficking in the area, and I
Very
say
sad.
that like that is morally like wrong, and I agree. But I never went to a church. I think it's wrong to sell people because you're born with not a God-given right for freedom, but a given right by the government.
Okay, great
If
point
we were
you're
born,
raising.
if we
It's
were
totally
born
irrelevant to what I'm
in
answering.
Arabia,
Totally irrelevant. I am not standing out here talking about churches or religion. This gentleman asked me, what's your evidence for the existence of God? Sixth point is, moral absolutes demand a moral lawgiver. Now, if you believe there are no moral absolutes, you're a moral relativist, then I don't have a point to make.
Okay, then point 7.
Okay? But I think every atheist friend of mine has moral absolutes. Because every atheist friend of mine looks into the looks into the face of the person who abuses children and says, "You should not have abused that child." And when my atheist friend uses the word "should," they're appealing to a standard outside of us and acting as if it's real. And the only way it can be real is if there is some God to create and define it.
or society.
Seventh piece of evidence for the existence of God is love. Our experience of love tells us that there is more to reality than simple matter and energy. There's this innate human being ability that we people have to genuinely care. Eighth piece of evidence, is that where we're at? 8?
Right.
Eighth piece of evidence is rational minds. Your rational mind points to a rational God. Why? Because it's preposterous to believe that the rational comes from the non-rational. It's ludicrous to believe that the rational comes from the irrational. And that's why Charles Darwin in 1883 wrote a letter to a man named Mr. Graham, in which he writes, if it's true that our minds are simply highly developed monkeys' minds, why do we trust them to tell us the truth about reality? Would you trust the thoughts of a monkey? He's struggling with epistemological nihilism. You can't know anything, because your mind is an accident. It comes from the irrational. No, your mind is not an accident. Your mind is so complex, it's amazing. It's far more reasonable to believe that your mind comes from a rational being than it is to believe that your mind comes from the irrational. Ninth piece of evidence. You as a human being have an innate drive for meaning in life. You're always attaching meaning to your life, so are we all.
That's society.
The only way there can be meaning is if there is a God who created you for a purpose. No God, life is ultimately meaningless.
I mean, what if someone says there is no meaning to life, or like?
Then I have nothing to say. But you know what you got to be doing
Okay.
if life is meaningless? You got to be committing suicide. Because your life is totally insignificant.
I've heard this argument. Okay.
Well, Camus made the argument, okay? Camus said, Albert Camus, the great French atheistic existentialist philosopher, said, the only question modern man must answer is, why not commit suicide? Now, maybe you're going to choose not to, fine. But if you're going to genuinely tell me that you don't believe God exists, but you've never seriously considered suicide, you're not being intellectually consistent and honest. That's Camus' point. I agree with him totally.
Oh, you're good.
Okay, so what's the point of a God? Like,
See,
if you
the
believe
innate
in a
drive
God-
for meaning in life is an indicator that God is left within you and within me. You're created for a purpose, and you have this innate drive for meaning and purpose in life. Well, where does that drive come from? Is there anything to satisfy that drive? 10th piece of evidence for the existence of God is the historical resurrection of Jesus Christ. The historical evidence is he really died. He was really buried in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. His followers dispersed in despair and disillusionment. 3 days later, he appeared risen from the dead over a period of 40 days to over 500 people who saw him at different times in different places risen from the dead. So those are 10 pieces of evidence, not proof, evidence that God exists. That's
Well-
why I believe God exists.
What was the 11th one?
I forget. There are a slew of other ones, but all right, here's the 11th one. For me, because I've never seen life come from non-life. And do you know what an atheist is believing? An atheist is someone who believes life comes from non-life. You talk about a blind leap of faith. That has got to be the biggest blind leap of faith I could ever imagine. To believe that life comes from non-life is incredible. Why? Because all of my observation tells me plant life comes from plant life. Animal life comes from animal life. Human life comes from human life. You never once get the animate from the inanimate. Never. But an atheist is someone who says, oh yeah, but there's one exception to all of this, Cliff. In the beginning, life comes from non-life. That's incredible that you could be so naive to believe that. Because all of your experience is life comes from life. Never one time in your experience do you see life come from non-life. Never. But you're asking me to believe that, oh no, but at one point, life came from non-life. I can't buy it. That's why I believe there's a God.